functions of management. Actually, management is kind of a pretty much an interrelated process. It looks into the actual process to execute a particular activity or a task to achieve the overall objective, and also it looks into the interpersonal skills like the the manager and the subordinates relationship and something like that. So that's kind of be considered to be a social process. Like as it mentioned, like it is the social process involving responsibility for economical and effective planning and regulation of operation of an enterprise and organization in the fulfill of the given purpose or the objective. So that's basically the importance or significance of management. And in fact, the process of achieving that is what we call a functions of management, right? So it is something like a characteristics of management. Like for example, if you talk about hallmark of a good person, you might say honesty and so many other factors. Same way, for a good management, so in order to understand and execute the task and also to accomplish the organizational goals or objective, there are some characteristics, and that is what we call a functions of management, a prime duty of management, something like that, right? And it's also a dynamic process. Like for example, it is not an kind of a common process. It's a unique for a unique project or process, or even same task. You might have to execute it in a different way in a different period of time. So it's kind of a dynamic process. It's not a constant process, and it's highly operative in nature. So these functions are not static; they are dynamic nature. So you need to understand that the core idea of what is that particular process, and based on that you have to really execute it in a corresponding way or something like that. So that's what basically we're going to achieve in this particular lecture. So we're going to try to understand what are the different functions of management. Say for example, what does that planning means, and what does an organizing means, and something like that, right? So why we have to study in detail is that is kind of a pretty much an um, fragmentation of the overall success or something like that, right? So in order to have a complete understanding of how an organization runs and profitability of any organization, or to at least to achieve the organization objective, there are some components that need to be understood, and those things are called functions of management, right? And this is specific to a particular manager or something like that, but we will be generalizing this to a holistic perspective. So let's get initially, George R. Terry has defined four fundamental functions of management called planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling. So planning in the sense like the work breakdown structure, like before you start anything, you just plan what are the different activities, or what can be critical activity, or what can be an activity that is pretty important but can go wrong, or what are the activities that can be done faster or something like that. So those things are called planning, right? So planning that particular activity or the project itself, we can fragment into different pieces of activities or events. Then organizing, you have to give a logical sequencing, like how you can perform a particular task, right? Say which task can be performed first and which can be postponed to a little later, so that within the stipulated deadline, the entire project is done, right? So that's very important. Planning. There's another thing is called scheduling, but we will be generally looking those in also into organizing, and something called actuating. So that is effectively doing that particular task, right? So planning and organizing is kind of a pretty much a pre-construction phase, or even planning is a pre-construction phase. Even organizing can be partly pre-construction and partly doing as built construction, right? Something like that. And actuating is actual construction process, and controlling is the whether to incorporate additional mechanism if the project goes late or something like that, or just to check whether something goes wrong from the actually planned, or if it's so, how to bring it back to the original level or something like that, right? So in order to maintain the equilibrium, so we need to look into the controlling phase also, right? So there are four phases, I repeat: planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling. So this is what George R. Terry has put forth. And Henry Fayol, who's considered to be the father of modern management, is a French mining engineer and also management theoretician, who has also put forth to manage is to forecast and to plan, right? To organize, to command, and to control. So he also has given five, um, fundamental principles of or fundamental, you know, functions of management, like forecast, plan, organizing, commanding, and controlling. So commanding here, it is also known as directing or actuating. So something like this. Whereas plan and organize and control were already given by George Terry. Only forecast is pretty much a new term that Henry Fayol has put forth, right? And later, the Luther Gulick, an American political scientist, who also gave no actually seven functions of management, which is like planning, organizing, staffing, directing, coordinating, reporting, and budgeting. Right. So in order to understand the seven, he has given an acronym called POST-CORB, like POSD, POST, CORB, CORB. Right. So P stands for planning, O stands for organizing, S stands for staffing, D stands for directing, and CO stands for coordinating, R stands for reporting, and B stands for budget. Right. So he has brought in budget also into it, like financial, implications of any project management or something like that. Right. So this is the uh, kind of a pretty much. But it cannot be. But not many people have used this as a standard, functions of management, but this is considered to be something like pretty much resulted from a lot of good work or research or something like that. Fine. So I repeat, the P stands for planning, O stands for organizing, S stands for staffing, and D stands for directing, and CO stands for coordinating, R stands for reporting, and B for budgeting. Right. Planning, we have seen, organizing, we have seen, and staffing is finding the right people for a right job. It is just like um, the HR job, which is to recruit or select best personnel for a best job. And also, if the existing staff, if they feel that given a training, they can perform really good or can able to adjust the newer environment, then giving them the training and the exercise drills or something like that, so as to enhance their existing knowledge or something else. So those things are for staffing. And how do you make use of your staffs or employees? D is directing, as I told you, which is actually the actuating or commanding. So it can be called in any way. And CO for coordinating. And this is a very important thing. So collaboration, coordinating are considered to be even still now it's a gray area in many organizations. Like if they could achieve 100% coordination, then the profitability is assured, right? So achieving 100% coordination among a team or an organization itself is a very big task, right? So that's one of the important functions of management. And R stands for reporting. Like we talked about the monitoring or controlling and such things. So that can be put under reporting. And B for budget is the financial thing, like how money gets involved in the functions of management. So in order to achieve the organizational objective, you have to not only provide the necessary, the 4 or 5 fundamentals of management, but also the seventh fundamental, which is the monetary involvement. So that's also very important. Right? Say if you don't have a budget and if you have all good plans and good execution procedure, then without the budget you can't able to achieve that particular task. So why Luther Gulick has put forth budget as also an important term in terms of functions of management. However, all these things are pretty much theoretical, and most of it were like considered to be kind of accepted criterion. But unless Knudsen and O'Donnell, like all these things are just theory, but Knudsen and O'Donnell's, the functions of management are still in practice, right? So that's the very important thing, and it's also 5 in nature. 5 functions of management. What is the planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So this is the classical, but also the modern functions of management, or which is widely accepted by many theoreticians as well as practitioners. So notes and old owners, the functions of management is the final, and that is what we follow still now. It's the modern management, but it is not done solely by Knudsen and O'Donnell, because you can see from George Terry, Henry Fall, and Luther Gillick. So they have defined planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. But Knudsen and O'Donnell have specified a lot of things and finally have come to the 5 functions of management. So those are planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So in order to understand this functions of management, can see this particular diagram. This is highly visual. So this is the first thing is called planning, and the next thing is organizing and staffing and directing and controlling. Right. So the planning can be, for example, this vertex you can draw like a triangle. And for example, if this planning vertex is the top of a triangle, and then you can find out 2 bottom thing that can be correlated to that. So planning can influence directing as well as staffing. Then organizing can influence the controlling as well as the directing. And if you take staffing, it is directly related to planning and directing. And if you take controlling, it is staffing and organizing. But not only that, it also looks into the nearest factor, like planning looks into organizing, and organizing looking into staffing, and staffing in directing, and directing to controlling. So which means almost all the factors are interrelated and they are highly inseparable. And these are practically important things. If you fail to plan, then the entire thing can go wrong. Like the functions, all the functions of management can go wrong. But if you plan perfectly and you organize perfectly, but if you don't staff it or maneuver your personnel, then it is pretty much an disaster. So you can only have a good planning and organizing, but execution like directing and controlling have got a huge implication, because staffing has got its influence in the controlling as well as in directing. So that could go wrong. So if you have a good plan but bad people, it does not work really. So that's a saying, good employee versus the bad boss. It is waste of time, and not so good employee and good boss. It's productivity, right? So the boss can give you good idea, even though if the employees are very poor or lacking skills or something like that. But vice versa is very disastrous to the organization. That's why staffing plays a huge role, when which you need to really understand what is the nature of the job, and you have to accommodate that particular people, or the people who possess skill to execute that particular task or something. If you fail to do that, or if the staffing is very poor, then you don't have any control over the execution, or the final product will be defective or something. So we're not assured of 100% involvement of the uh, what you call the unskilled people, or people who does not possess that particular quality to do that particular job. So we'll define what is the planning. Notes definition is a little bit pretty good between what we think of what is planning. This is the definition. Planning is deciding in advance what to do, when to do, and how to do. Right. So it's a typical definition of planning. It is deciding in advance, like it is not doing the course of time or during the course of action, but it is deciding in advance. In construction, we call that as a pre-construction phase. The pre-construction phase will be looking into various options, like whether we go for precast concrete or cast in situ, or it is really required to go with a steel composite section, or we can go with only RCC structure or something like that. So those decisions are called planning. That is deciding in advance what to do and when to do and how to do also. So it's very important how you execute that also considered to be a planning rather than other things, right? So other functions of management, right? And it builds a gap from where we are and where we want to be, or something like that, right? So that's pretty much a good definition of moods. That is pretty much the planning, and it is considered to be the first and foremost important, functions of management. And very important thing is, planning is necessary to ensure proper utilization of resources. The resources can be human or any other resources in the organization, right? Something like, there is a course called resource management, like people who do masters in construction management, they do resource management. And in MBA, they also have a course called manpower planning, something like pretty much how you, plan for human resources, something that apart from human resource management, right? So I'm just saying these two courses were taught apart from human resource management because of its significance in the organizational structure or organizational, you know, behavior or something like that, right? So planning is a fundamental thing, and we need to really look into the interpersonal skills and the utilization of the personals as well as the resources. Right. So nowadays we talk about lean construction, in which we foresee what could go wrong during the construction phase, in the pre-construction phase itself. Then we try to avoid that so that the final product is flawless and it does not have much defects or something like that. Right. So that's what basically we call lean construction, eliminating waste during the pre-construction stages. So that's considered to be one of the planning functions. And the next is the organizing. Organizing is pretty much, how you make use of your resources or something like that. And in fact, planning is a raw or abstract idea, whereas organizing will give you, overview of how you make use of that planning activities. This is something pretty much you incorporate the logical sequencing into the planning so that your planning is done in an efficient and effective manner. Right. According to Henry Foyle, organizing means a business is to provide it with everything useful or it's functional. That is like raw materials, tools, capitals, personals, or something like that. Right. So how you make use of the resources with the accordance with the planned activity or the sort of executed or like something like put forth or formulated task or something like that, right? So that's basically the organizing. And in fact, organizing is a complex process, but it can be put forth like bringing the financial resources, like physical resources and human resources and other resources together to achieve the organization objective or goal. And there are some other, processes involved, like identification activities. As I told you in the beginning, we in the planning will just jot down the list of activities. Then organizing will be executing based on some logic, and also we understand which activity is really good or which is kind of considered to be critical or which needs much attention, much manpower, or sometimes the risk involved in particular activity, something called risk management or something like that. But in nowadays we talked about resilience management in construction, in which the pandemic and this kind of thing can bring down the organization to a greater extent. So in order to avoid that, what is the resilience management strategy a company or an organization follows? Or something like this is the disaster management or something like that. When the company is not performing really good, what can be the method or technique that leaders or the employees can follow to uplift the morale as well as the financial status of a particular organization. So that's basically the resilience management. All these things comes under the organization, right? And it talks about classification of group activities. First, we identify activities with severity, less severity, and riskier and not riskier, and then we'll classify them based on its severity, something like that. Then we assignment of duties to employees. If there is a highly riskier activity, we generally don't put pressure into that, but instead we'll try to employ some experience or senior employee into it so that based on his experience, he can rectify or nullify or even sort out that particular riskier activity, something like that, right? So that's basically assignment of duty. And delegation of authority, this is also very important, so that we'll be dealing that in the later part of this course, which is called the span of control or span of management. So delegation is the transfer of authority, like how many people are responsible as a leader, or what is the number of employees that a manager can have. So that determines the organization. For example, if too many people put under a single manager, the manager will buckle up, so he does not have much potential, or sometimes he may be really good in managing so many people, number, even umpty number of people put under him. So those things we call delegation of authority and responsibility. And sometimes, if too many people report to a single person or single manager, then the decision making or the response they receive from the manager will be pretty slow, because the manager has to really look into a lot of queries or something like that. But if you can do it in a decentralized manner, when which centralized is all the people reporting to a single manager, decentralized you can have a cluster of teams. So each team have a leader. The leader can represent it to a overall leader or the team leader or even the higher bosses. So those is called delegation of authority and creation of responsibility. Then coordinating authority and responsibility relationship. So in many IT companies, they have a new post called CHO, Chief Happiness Officer. So many people who work in multinational company have got higher stress level, especially in terms of software where the deadline is pretty strict. So they have some kind of a post like Chief Happiness Officer. So when which his role is to reduce the stress of the employees, understand what are the different stress patterns and stress levels, and to make them feel a little happier, so that the productivity gets increased, something like that. So those things like the interpersonal skills, like how do we achieve the interpersonal skills and reduce stress among the employees, is another organizing factor or a company's important role, right? So that's why we put that under organizing. Then we talk about staffing. Staffing, as I told you, it's maneuvering the personnel, right? So according to Notes and O'Donnell, the staffing involves manning the organizing structure through proper and effective selection and appraisal. It's more like the HR job, like the human resource manager job, to identify people if they don't have people with that particular qualification or experience, or if they have that particular thing, how do they make use of them for the project or the or overall organizational objective or goal, something like that. So it is something like finding the right people for the right job. So that's basically the staffing, right? And it's not only that. Supposing a person works loyally for so many years, you need to acknowledge his loyalty also. Like sometimes people who work for 10 years or 15 years, they are loyal to the company. They have to be given credentials like 10 years, 5 years, and all pretty much higher duration. So they are very loyal to the company. So they should be given some remuneration or some gift to motivate them. Or if the person who performs really better, so because of him, the things go up or the profitability of the organization increases. So he is not only paid higher, but also given higher incentive, so that his morale also will be higher, so that the people who are dormant or something can, that will become a motivation, so that they also can start working in a much different way and also in a much productive way or something like that, right? But it should be very transparent in terms of giving that. Otherwise, it will create lot of chaos or interpersonal skills among the employees and the employer. And as staffing means, like it's manpower planning, recruitment, selection and placement, then training and development, and remuneration, which I told you is the appraisal or some gift, or in terms of honorarium given to the prominent employees, something like that. Sometimes many mathematical as well as management theoreticians or qualitative indices were developed to scale the performance of employee, right? Not only quantitative in terms of numerical value, but also in terms of qualitative value. Say, for example, a person in a construction company, say in terms of design office, he executes really good, or he does design of all the projects tasks assigned to him really good. So there's another person who develops new design charts and design, nomograms or something like that. So will both be given the same credentials? The answer is no. A person who designs design charts and all pretty much considered to be very useful for the future project as well. So he has put in much understanding or much experience into it, and he has developed something pretty novel, which is pretty much different from the executing the conventional design task, right? So he has to be given more incentives than only the people who are happily doing with the existing design charts and common design works or something like that. So that's pretty much an important thing that you should really look into the staffing. If you don't respect the people who do really good job, then he might move to other job, and it's a loss for the organization as a whole, right? So that's what staffing also pretty much important. And skilled laborers in terms of construction are very much important. So staffing is retaining the skilled laborers so that the finished construction facility will be flawless and very good. Then promotion and transfer, like if they require promotion or based on their credential, if promotion is there, then you should really do. For example, a senior most engineer, say, is thinking of his promotion, and he delivers a lot of good tasks. And if supposing a new guy comes in because of his educational qualifications, say he does a MBA from a premier institute in India, whereas a senior engineer may not have an MBA degree, but he has got a lot of skills because of him, the company has got benefited a lot. So instead of promoting him, if they promote the new entry or a guy with MBA degree from a premier institute, then it will boost up the morale of the new guy, but it will certainly put the morale down of the senior engineer, and it's totally a loss to the organization as well, right? So that's pretty much an important thing that you should really look into in terms of promotion and transfer. The next is the directing. So once we do good planning and good execution or organizing, and even we provide good employees or right people for the right job, directing is also very important. Like all these things are done by human beings. There could be something that we will be deviating from the actual or plan. So in order to put everything in the right track, directing plays a huge role. So this is one of the important functions of management. Among the five, directing plays a huge role, and this is also known as commanding, leading. In some textbooks, you can have this different names, but directing and commanding, leading, almost all represent the same. How do you make sure that you do the particular task in a particular manner? Right. So we planned, we organized, we put right people for the right job, and if you leave it like that, thinking that the project or process will be done by the three functional management, this is wrong. So in order to see that, we need to really guide them, motivate them. Sometimes motivation also comes under directing. That may not be there in staffing as well. Sometimes it will be there in staffing, like the HR manager motivates the employee to take up a training, or give motivation in terms of financial benefit, in terms of incentives and so on. But this motivation is something like a leadership quality, in which they talk about how it can be done in a right way or something like that. So this is a team hurdle. In fact, in IT companies, they have something called agile management, where they have a sprint, in which every week or every day they have to first come and meet in the morning, and then things they'll decide what to do in that particular week or something like that. So that's a directing. In construction, we have also our hurdles. In the morning, many people, I mean, the team will meet, and then the head will brief them what to do in that particular day. And then in the evening hurdle, they look into whether they have accomplished the task given assigned to them, or if they have not done, they'll understand what went wrong or what could be done in the next day to accomplish that as well as to accelerate the next day's work or something like that. So those things are called directing, right? So it's a leadership and communications. So it's all about how you communicate them and how you collaborate with them or how you lead them. So that matters the most. So it's the fourth function of management. And the final functions of management is the controlling. So controlling is the process of checking whether or not proper progress is being made towards the objective and goal, and acting if necessary to correct any deviation. So this is a typical definition. And controlling is the final function for management. It has to check whether the everything goes wrong or if something goes wrong or if everything goes in right track or right way. So it's just like to check, or if it is going wrong, then we will be taking action to correct it. Otherwise, we will just monitor it and we will be reporting it to the office, or we'll be just generally looking into the accomplishing the objective, overall objective, by seeing whether the task is performed in the manner in which it is to be performed, and also in other factors. And the notes as also defined, notes and ordinal also have defined this thing. And in fact, there's one famous book written by Notes and Ordinal is Principles of Management. If you get a copy of that, you read it. It's a very wonderful book. It has got a lot of implications on the principles of management. So this is functions of management. There are 14 principles of management. So we'll be taking a look at it in the Monday's class, right? So that's also a very much important thing. So what does that mean is controlling is the measurement and correction of performance activities of subordinates in order to make sure that the enterprise, here enterprise means organization, objective and plans desired to obtain them as being accomplished. So in most people have defined in the same way. So controlling is to finally executing the task. In order if they find any deviation, they have to set right or put them into the track, or pretty much like it is like a controlling mechanism. So in army, you can probably see the troops. There will be a commanding officer which commands that, and also who controls the the group's decision also. Like the subordinates have to obey the chief commanding officer's order, and then the chief commanding officer will put forth the control mechanism. Like they say, you take cover or you take lead or something like that. So those things are called controlling or something like that. So it's not only commanding, controlling also very important. So proper control will actually yield good results or something like that. While planning strategies, controlling also pretty much important thing. So if a strategy they put forth is not promising, or it is erroneous, then you don't have to really progress blindly further, but instead you can fall back or retrieve back, or you can even buckle back, and so that you can form a new strategy to really work in a different direction to achieve the organizational objective or something. So that's basically the controlling. It has three steps. One is establishment of standard performance, then measurement of actual performance, and corrective action. So first we'll check whether everything goes correct, wrong, or partially correct or partially wrong. Then we need to find out whether the actual performance is satisfactory. If it is not, we'll perform the corrective action. So that's the pretty much a controlling factor. One example is the traffic light. If you see a red light, you stop your vehicle at that point of time and before the zebra crossing. But if it is orange and if you have a few seconds and you can probably move, but you have only very few seconds left and you're sure it will be red, you can probably halt or at least pass your vehicle so that you don't get into trouble. And if it is green, you don't have to really look into anything. You can probably it's a signal to go. So those things can be called as controlling, right? So the signal controls your driving or your vehicle or something like that. So that's typically the controlling. These are the 5 functions of management. And this brings to the end of today's lecture.